Hey, I dig giving fucking screen time to this shit though. This was like the favorite era of activism I ever read about. Like these, like the Black Panther Party, and
Shit
then
was
like
intense, man. Shit was going down
anti-colonialism in fucking India were like some of the cooler socialist and anarchist
around
fucking
the world.
Yeah.
The
I'm just
50s
saying,
and
like out of the
60s
stuff that I
were
was exposed
popping.
to, like those were like my like,
Yeah,
these
gotcha,
ones are
gotcha.
fucking rad. I like
What
these.
what was it in India that you were talking about?
Like some of the anti-colonial anarchists and stuff that like were
Nice.
like using like Hindu traditional thinking with like Ganesh as like they were like making their own spiritualism and like they were doing
No,
it
they
all. They were going to fucking Europe to learn how to be chemists, to make bombs, rethinking traditional Hindu values, and trying to build anarchist anti-colonial societies. They were rad.
Word. You know, and to be clear, under international law, for those naysayers, if you live in military occupied territory, you not only have the right, but in some cases, I believe, an obligation to resist by any means necessary if you're being violently militarily occupied, as was, which is the function of colonialism and colonization, is violent military occupation, 9.9 times out of 10. So anyway, what was his other book?
I can't see it, but it was
His writings. Hold on. See, anyways.
I swear there was another book. But
Probably.
like,
Scroll up.
What I remember reading from it, at least it might have just been a collection of his writings. Was like he was literally making fucking like tactical plans about like, yo, when they roll up with tanks to try to take us out, like you need people to like roll around. Like you're gonna have two guys run across the front, you throw a Molotov to the left for a
guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, dude, he was like getting down with that shit. He was involved in the Attica prison riots and stuff. Like this dude was like a fucking.
Which again though, we don't want to. I push back. Like this is not like fun times. Like doing that kind of shit, having to resort to that kind of like extreme drastic measure speaks to the desperation of the circumstance and the situation at hand, where there is no other fucking means possible, because that's the only time that violence is legitimate is in cases of legitimate self-defense. Now, everybody has to go through that and work it out for themselves, you know what I'm saying? But typically speaking, that means imminent threat of violent death. That's when it's okay to use violence back. That's why I'm a big advocate, because again, anybody, and I say that because I guarantee you don't gotta ask me to take my word for it. People who, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, people who glorify violence either and I mean like really glorify and celebrate it, or like about it, they're like, oh, that's great shit, you know. Either A, have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, or B, are total fucking psychopaths. Let's keep
this back into the context of where they were at in the
I'm not
COINTELPRO.
I'm not I'm not condemning it. That's why I'm not. Hold on a second. Let me finish it. I'm saying I said people who celebrate it, people who glorify violence, either and do not recognize how terrible a thing it is. Doing physical harm to another person. I don't give a fuck what the context is. If someone's coming at you with a knife or a gun, and you got to do what you got to do to defend yourself, your family, your friends, whatever, not your property, but your family, your friends, other people from being, yourself or others from being imminently harmed, then you got to do what you got to do. But if you take pleasure or joy or pride in that, or seek it out, then you are either fucking ignorant and irresponsible or a fucking sociopath. That's by definition.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I always want to recognize, I don't want to celebrate that kind of stuff, but acknowledge its sometimes necessity, which is going back to the ballot or the bullet thing. Malcolm X said, he said, it's not the ballot or the bullet. He said, it's the ballot and the bullet. If you have the ability to affect change, positive social change through the ballot box, nonviolent direct action, whatever policy legislation, you have an obligation to do that. And it's when that is taken away from you, the opportunity to not just work within the system, but to non-violently create change. When that is taken away from you, that is when you have to look around to see what the other options are. You see what I'm saying? And so Malcolm X made very clear at the beginning of that debate, it's not a question of the ballot or, it's the ballot and. And depending on the extremity, the harshness of the environment, you got to go through, you know what I'm saying? You got to work that out for yourself, you know? But so I feel you. It's all like, yeah, that's like, it's, you know, if that's where it was at and he's doing that, then yeah, you know what I'm saying? But it's not something to be celebrated, because again, like I've had a gun to the back of my head and it's not a good fucking feeling. You know what I'm saying? Totally. I've never held a gun to anybody else, but I've been around guns. I've been exposed to gun violence. And again, it's not a good feeling when somebody who does not when somebody who wishes you ill has the ability to take your life from you immediately.
Yeah.
That's not a good fucking place to be. That's not somewhere where any sane person, I think, wants to exist on a regular basis. And that's the violence. That's, when you talk about, and that's the kind of violence that people are dealing with in occupied places like Palestine and other places around the world, where these anti-colonial decolonizing sort of movements and struggles are still taking place. And in many places, there's still armed struggles because of the kind of violence that is subjected on those movements, pushing for greater access and control over resources, more equitable, just in societies around the world. So it's important to acknowledge that, yeah, sometimes it's necessary, but it's not something in my mind that to be sought out or celebrated, if that makes sense.
It does. You looped like 3 times and said the same thing like 4 times. I get that it's like really important.
Well, then cut me off.
I was trying to.
But I just wanted to make sure that I fully articulated that. Loop again. Why are you such a hater?
No,
Why are you
dude,
such a
it's
fucking
just like
hater?
a minute and a half of like.
It's important, bro. Do you have any idea do you understand why I'm so why I'm making sure to push back against that so hard? I mean, think about this is coming straight from my experience as a teacher and also my own personal experience. You know what I'm saying? Like growing up where in a culture, in a society that really celebrates violence and militarism and all that stuff. And so I'm just thinking,
can we just go meta for 2 seconds here?
Hold on a second.
No,
and so I just want to say,
I don't try to
hold on a second. I'm almost done. I would have already been done. And so I'm just saying, it's that Joe Rogan kind of mentality and all that fun stuff that I'm really trying to push back hard against. Go ahead. Why are you such a hater?
Because you go on for too long, dude, and then you say things like, hey, just cut me off, and then you don't let me actually get a word in edgewise.
You have the entire floor.
But I don't want it anymore. I lost my train of thought because you went on for so fucking long.
You just hating right now, and we're already at an hour.
No,
so
we are, but
you totally. This is just pure hating. Come back with something substantive. You have the floor.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think as important it is to always put out the general disclaimer of, we don't advocate for for wanton violence.
For unnecessary or unjustified violence.
I think that the interesting thing about reading a human being like George Jackson's story is that he becomes more of an intellectual after being locked up. And like this quote here, Jackson remarked, "I met Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Engels, and Mao when I entered prison, and they redeemed me." So like you see somebody who is hyper disenfranchised and like finds these things to be positive about, finds this hope in humanity behind these like communist notions and like kind of stuff like that, and like
revolutionary, starts
literally becoming like an organizer within prison. Like he's just somebody who was like pure fucking.
You don't think I'm talking shit on George Jackson?
No. I'm just saying like. The interesting thing to me about him is that as the pressure got harder and harder and harder on him, as the circumstances got shittier and shittier,
he was murdered. He was killed.
Yeah, he was eventually killed in prison because he kept successfully planning prison
strikes. He was advocating for better for
better conditions,
for more just treatment of people in prison, incarcerated folks.
Yeah, and
among other things.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. In a sense, to see how much resolve this person had, like how much persistence. It is tragic that he was met with death by the state. It is, but it's I don't know. It's like
murdered,
fucking,
essentially.
Yeah. So